You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of the Soul Forge podcast.
Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Welcome back to the Forge of Souls. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a long-time listener, glad to have you back. I've got a very special episode for you this week. I had a conversation with a wonderful lady from California. She goes by the name Meditera. She taught me quite a bit. Now this is going to be a longer than regular episode. I definitely encourage you to stick it out, listen to the whole thing. We had a lot to talk about. Sex and passion and communication and enlightenment and so much more. She's a beautiful and intelligent woman, definitely knows what she's talking about. Just between you and me, I'm kind of glad that it was over Skype and that my camera wasn't working, because just looking at her picture, wow, she is gorgeous and intelligent. And that, to me, is a deadly combination. You'll find that I actually did manage to hold my own conversation-wise. I got to put in a few good points, ask some poignant questions. I think it was a really great conversation. But like I said, if the camera was working and we had to look at each other, I don't think I would have been nearly as intelligent as I was. But I will leave that for you guys to judge. Anyway, just go ahead, take a listen to the episode. It's really great. Check out her Facebook page and her website, which we discuss in the show. And I'll be back at the end of the episode to wrap it up.
I'm here with Meta. She's a Tantra-based coach, storyteller, mentor, and cosmic lover. She is a teacher and facilitator with expertise in the realms of self-expression, embodiment, sexuality, relationships, and love. Welcome to the Soul Forge podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you could make it. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing. It's a sunny day here in San Diego.
Oh, that's perfect. We had rain all day, so not so great here. But I'm talking to you. I'm going to learn something new. It's going to be a great day.
Good. I'm excited.
Good. Okay. So you told me just before we started recording that you've actually been on 3 other podcasts in the last few days?
Yes, I have.
And how was that experience? Is this your first time podcasting, or have you done a lot of that, or...
I've done a few over the last 3 years, and I actually had my own podcast at one point, and it was about love. And that was a fun experience that I had, you know, searching for the right people to interview. And then I just got to the point where I was pivoting ideas in my business, and it was no longer relevant. But more recently, I've been doing podcasts along the lines of personal power and purpose and sexuality and love.
Yeah, very good. And you have a website. It's liveatantric.life.
Yep, liveatantric.life.
Tantric. It's tantric. I keep saying tantric. I guess
you could say tantric. It's fine.
Okay. All right. And I've been reading some of the articles on there, and they're quite eye-opening. You talk about all kinds of different things. How did you get into these kinds of topics? What was it in your life that led you down this path? If that's not too broad of a question.
No, I love these types of questions. It just lets me go anywhere. So, I mean, what you see on my blog and on my website are things that I'm just absolutely passionate about. And it's just been interesting. My journey has been more about honoring and celebrating my passions instead of trying to just talk about one thing. Because, you know, in the world of work and purpose and leaving a legacy, sometimes we can put ourselves in a little bit of a box. So that's what I did for the first few years of really getting myself out there. So what you see on my blog is a wide range of topics of what I'm passionate about. One of the reasons why I talk about specifically, like you'll find things on spirituality, like I said, sexuality, love, relationships, but also leadership. These have all been really significant experiences in my life. I like to practically combine spirituality and self-expression through the realms of business and creativity. So, I spent 10 years in the corporate world, the corporate design world, before I really got into coaching and spirituality. So that's why what you'll find is just a range of topics.
The one thing I noticed is the topics, there is a wide variety of them, but they all do come down to one basic thing, I find it. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it's it's fulfilling maybe your purpose in life, finding who you are, the essential nature of your existence.
Oh gosh, I really love that. No one's ever explained it that simply to me, and I think I'm going to take this transcript and use that.
Oh, okay, good. That doesn't sound too highfalutin or hoity-toity or whatever.
It might for some people, but I love it.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, because in your bio, your expertise is self-expression, basically communication, saying what you want, who you are. Yeah, what you want is what it essentially comes down to.
Yeah, communication has been such a lesson for me specifically because it really comes down to me being able to tell the world who I am and what I'm about. If I am here to teach something, how do I communicate that to people in a way that touches them, that moves them?
And we all talk, we all say a million things a day, but how many of us are actually really communicating instead of just saying words?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good statement. Yeah, I mean, I was in New Zealand for about 7 weeks last month, and it was being around nature all day long. And being around, if we did speak to each other, it was around truth. So there wasn't tons of talking. But then when I got home, it's just a different culture, right? And I just noticed how many words were coming out of everybody's mouth, and including my own, that really didn't mean anything. I wasn't communicating anything other than my own concerns and stories and things that didn't really say anything. So I love that you said that.
Because we're all self-centered. We all want what we want, and when it comes right down to it, there's a great line from a song. I can't remember the song name, but basically it says, "Words just push the air around." Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Like a majority of the time, and that's just like how society supports us right now, is we're pushing air around. But there is a huge opportunity here, and something that you'll find in my work as well, to, if you are going to speak anything, speak from your heart, speak from your soul, because there's a level of truth there that might even scare us. And to really be able to touch into those words of the soul is just a different experience.
Do you find that if you're not scared, it's really not worth pursuing? Because you should be scared. It's a new experience, a new way of thinking that our consumer-based society really doesn't encourage.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there have been times where I've been intuitively pulled in a certain direction, and I just couldn't put words to it, period. I'm just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to do this because there is no other choice as far as what I really feel I need to do this thing. And I might be kicking and screaming the whole way, but there have been huge moments in my life where I moved to Hong Kong one time to pursue a contract with a company, and I didn't want to go at all. But I ended up going, and it ended up changing my life.
For the better.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any times in your life where you went down kicking and screaming?
I'm sure there has been. I wish I could think of some right off the top of my head, but yeah, it's usually when you don't want to do something, you do it against your will, and it usually almost always turns out for the better, or if not the better, at least it taught you something about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And you said against your will, which to me is so accurate, because there's this version of ourselves where we have free will and we think that we can make all of these choices, but at the end of the day, this is just my experience. I'm being pulled by something higher than myself. And so there's the will of my personality, and then there's also the will of this higher version of me that I'm just still getting to know on a daily basis.
And it's a lifelong journey to find that person.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I've found the last 2 to 4 years, I guess. That's part of the reason for the Soul Forge podcast to begin with, to learn more about myself, to talk about uncomfortable subjects, to talk about these things that people don't normally discuss or bring up, and talk about it in a way that my listeners will think to themselves, wow, you know what? I think the same way, and nobody's ever brought that up. And this guy here on this silly radio show on the internet is talking about this stuff, and you can hear it in his voice. And I've gotten comments like that too, like, "Oh, you could tell you were uncomfortable, but you pushed through it, and you talked about that stuff." And people are grateful for it. So it's scary, but it needs to be done because there's not enough people doing it.
Yeah, I think that it's small things like that, seemingly small things like that, that can change people's lives with just like a sentence, you know? So
Exactly.
To share that stuff and to lean into that stuff, whether you're kicking and screaming or enjoying it, it's just like so priceless.
Oh, for sure, definitely. And there's lots of topics that I haven't gotten up the nerve to talk about yet.
Oh yeah?
Oh, I'm sure there is. Mostly when it comes to sexuality and relationships. Like there are confidences and experiences and stuff that I've had with people that I might not want to quite bring up just yet.
Yeah.
For example, on episode 40, I did anyway. I talked about how I ended up in this town, and the girl that brought me here, and how it wasn't a very good thing. She wasn't a good person, and somebody actually sent her the link to the episode, and she.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, she was not happy, and she bitched me out for a good hour on over text. And so the next episode I talked about that experience, and I invited her to be on the show and talk about our relationship from her perspective, and I never heard from her again. So
Wow.
So I have to be careful with what I'm talking about and my truth as I see it.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting inquiry, being careful with what we're talking about, you know, like especially when you have a whole podcast or when you're on any kind of platform, there's always that question like about communication and speaking your truth and how it might affect other people, or the other type of knowing where it's like, I have to say this. I can't think about how it will affect other people, you know? It's just like such a good balance.
Because sometimes you're compelled to say these things, whether it's good for you or not.
Yeah, and like I said, we're changing people's lives, even with the uncomfortable stuff. Yeah.
At least we're trying to.
Yeah, I'm particularly passionate about speaking my truth and my experiences about relationships. I know that you said that that's more of an uncomfortable arena for you.
Only in the way that, like my local listeners, people that I know, if they listen to it, what will they think kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because I have to see these people from time to time, right? But otherwise, if I moved to, like, I don't know, some one-horse town and didn't know anybody there, I could talk about anything because it wouldn't matter because I wouldn't know the people. But yeah, it's a balance.
Hey, podcast fans, Spotify is making it easy for you to stream this podcast and many others like it on your mobile device, desktop app, and smart speaker. Open the app on your mobile device or desktop, click on the browser channel, then click on the podcast section. You'll be able to stay thoroughly entertained during your commute to work, your drive home, and your downtime, thanks to Spotify.
Do you have any stories about where you spoke your truth and you may have had some adverse effects?
Oh, wow. I mean, that.
Or has it all been pretty positive?
I find that there's a distinction between me speaking my truth and doing it in a way where I've owned my part first. And then the other way is speaking my truth and I haven't owned my part first.
Okay.
When I own my part first, I get nothing but positive reflection and feedback.
I can see that.
yeah, there's always that one or two people who are just out there to teach and preach and give feedback, like criticism, no matter what. There's always that percentage, but I get like almost none of those people when I do it from that way. The other way, if I speak my truth and I haven't taken responsibility first, then I get backlash. I get what people could call haters, or like people who don't understand me. It's just all of this like messy chaos types of response and feedback. And all it is just that I'm not integrated and I'm not being able to take responsibility in what I'm saying right now. So
does that have something to do with feeling authentic in your words, or accepting them into yourself before you say them, or?
Yeah, I mean, being authentic in your words is such a relative statement. You know, like somebody could say the shittiest thing and they're like, well, I'm being authentic, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But on the other hand, the second question you asked, I forgot what it was, but it's like what I do when I have a problem with something. Well, speaking your truth could be anything along the lines of saying I love you, all the way to saying step up, you're doing a bad job, do better. Or stop hurting the other people. Like it could be something that feels so good, but something that feels absolutely terrible to share. So I just want to acknowledge that. So more along the lines, when I talk about something that could potentially be scary to say, like if I'm pointing out lies or calling somebody to a higher perspective, or just knowing that like if I say this, some people might have a problem with it. My process is I really think about internally what I want to say to that person, and I don't make myself wrong for anything that I want to say, but I do keep it inside first. And then I ask myself, okay, where am I not taking responsibility here, or where could I take more responsibility? So that's where the mastery comes into play, you know? Like I ask myself, am I just pissed off because I'm jealous or I'm wanting something that they have, or am I upset because I'm doing this or I'm wanting this and I'm not giving this to myself? I hope that you kind of understand the theme here. I'm just pretty much asking, what is it that I actually want? Or am I just pointing the finger at someone for no reason?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
So then the second part of my process is after I've sat in that, you know, if I have something to share, I don't share it right away, because it's just, there's something called discernment that I think we all need to learn a little bit more of, and just not spew the first few thoughts that come up to mind.
Right. So you kind of self-edit and make it so that it's balanced and fair?
Not necessarily balanced and fair. I mean, you could look at it that way. More so, but am I taking responsibility first? And sometimes that takes inquiry and contemplation with yourself.
Right. Yes.
It's a very mature step of the process. So just like inquire within yourself, what's actually going on here? What's the truth? Am I lying to myself right now, you know? Then the second part of that process is, okay, if I still do feel like I need to speak my truth, now that I've taken responsibility, would I change the way that I communicate to that person? So it's like, I'm not out to make anyone wrong.
Right.
But what I want to do is enroll them into a different way of being or a different way of collaborating together. And so what I'm essentially doing is not saying you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing that. It is, hey, I'm noticing that that this is happening in your life, or I'm noticing that you're saying these things, and here's where I think there could be an improvement. So it's not like I'm making the person wrong and not providing a solution. It's just, or I'm just saying, hey, this matters to me. I just want to speak about this. And maybe this is a way that we could make it better.
Almost like constructive criticism, but you change your method of communication in order so that they have a better learning experience.
Yeah, and you want people to feel safe to say, yes, I want to listen to you. You know, when you're pointing the finger at someone, you're not enrolling them to partner with you. You're enrolling them to run away from you.
Yes, exactly. So do you find in your day-to-day life you have to always be on or super mindful of everything so that you can do this? Or do you find yourself sometimes just being lazy and just being a regular person again? I guess to boil it down to...
That's such a great question. I mean, as someone one of my gifts and geniuses is communication. And so I love that you're asking that, because really what I have to do in order to not be so structured and so on is that sometimes I have to allow myself to lose control.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, yeah.
That's a great question. So I think both, like we can't and we shouldn't walk around just being like, I'm doing robot hands right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need to communicate in the perfect way possible.
Yeah.
It's not about that all the time. What it is for me is about like, I just love people and I generally want to get along with all of them. And so how do I do that in a way that feels good? Like, regardless if I'm being highly communicative or losing control, at the end of the day, what I really want is just to love and be loved.
I think that's what we all want.
Yeah. So there will be days where I am being mindful. Like, let's say I call up my best friend, Carrie, and I'm like frustrated because her and I have so much history together. We also know how each other communicates. If I want to be messy and frustrated, she's probably going to be like, okay with that. And she's probably going to say, hey, Lauren, I think that you're frustrated right now. She'll turn on her communication thing, whatever. But if I'm going to be writing something political on the internet, or something that deals with feminism, or something that's really, really sensitive, then yes, I want to be as mindful as I can, not necessarily to censor what I'm communicating, but to respect all the people involved that will be listening to me, that will be impacted by what I'm saying.
Sometimes you want to do the higher aspect of your personality, and sometimes you just want to be you and have fun with your friends.
Sometimes I need places to grow myself, and if I allow myself to just lose control and not really think about any of that, that could uncover some areas that I need to grow.
And when that happens, it's almost like it's the next level that you're reaching, because it holds a mirror up to yourself. You see this thing, and then you can focus on it.
Exactly. Yeah. And what you're talking about is so important, I think, for everyone's journey. Is like, if you can allow yourself to lose control, you'll learn so much more about yourself faster, and you'll grow faster.
Right. And if you have a safe space where you can lose control, then it's safer for you. But I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Maybe you can help me out. I think
Also when we say like lose control, I want to be really specific. It's like, not like, when I say lose control, like there's a little control freak inside of all of us. It's just one of the mechanisms of the ego sometimes. So I'm not saying lose control, like quit your job and divorce your wife and leave your whole family behind so you can pursue some teenage life in the Caribbean, not that version.
Not quite that extreme.
Exactly. I just mean lose control, like just surrender and allow yourself to fail,
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Flopcast.
Where every week we drink a lot of coffee and we talk about comic books,
Movies,
conventions,
music,
Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, don't forget the coffee.
Lots of weird, obscure pop culture stuff from the 70s and 80s.
And chickens. Yeah, chickens.
This will be the stupidest half hour of your week.
We guarantee it.
You can find us on the ESO network
and Flopcast.net.
So what I really want to ask, or should ask, I suppose, is you've been doing this, you've been a coach, a Tantra-based coach for how long?
I've officially been coaching for the last 3 years. It was unknown to me until the last like 3 to 5 years that I've been practicing inherently and intuitively practicing the principles of Tantra pretty much my whole life.
So all along you've been doing it, but it was only lately that you realized you were.
Yeah, and I realized there was a whole body of work in Eastern tradition on how to live life tantrically. And a lot of people in the Western world, when they think of Tantra, they think sexuality. But the magic about Tantra is that sexuality is only a very small part of what Tantra and tantric living has to offer. So the tantric path, really just one of my teachers and friends says it's bringing consciousness to the unconscious. It's a process of being in the moment It's a process of growing and awakening on this path. And part of that process is sexuality. So that's why I do talk about that as well.
Okay, I like that. Bringing consciousness to unconsciousness, basically turning off our robot selves.
That's one way for sure. It's pretty much just like you said, that amazing one-liner that I need to transcribe from the beginning of our episode here. You said something like this is how I say it, turning in on oneself and really knowing who you are at the deepest depths and the widest ends of the earth of who you are.
The core of the individual.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I've heard of Tantra, of course. Which tradition is that from? Is it Hindu? Is it Buddhism? I can't remember for some reason.
Well, so there are different lineages that have come up in history. There's a Hindu lineage. There's a Buddhist, like a Tibetan Buddhist lineage. And then, I've gotten more into Tibetan Buddhist lineages and have just recently started learning more about Kashmir Shaivism lineage.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, and I can't even speak too much on that one yet because it's just such a new exploration for me. But it's just each and every one is just so magical and offers a new way of thinking for life.
All right, where should we go from here then?
Well, what are some things you might want to know about building amazing relationships, or like spirituality in relationships, or even sexuality if you're willing to go there yet?
I'm willing to go everywhere. That's what this whole podcast is about. But
Good.
What I've found in my own life, in my own circle of people, is that not a lot of people are willing to get to the deep fundamental level. It's all superficial communication, and it's very hard to get somebody to drill down into the core. Like when I went through a bad breakup, I did the whole. I'm going to post 10 different quotes about positivity on Facebook, and it drove people insane.
Yeah.
And after a while, I sickened myself with it too. But it was part of the healing process, and there's so much of that stuff out there on Facebook, other websites, Instagram, people online like yourself and whatnot are trying to get to this more conscious way of thinking, I find. But here in my own life, I'm having trouble finding people on the same wavelength.
Yeah, this is good because when you start to think about the whole like positivity movement, it's such an amazing theme and way of living. But sometimes in order to get to really truly authentic positive living, you've got to go through some hard stuff. And I think a lot of people jump straight to the positive way of living and they realize something about that's not working for them. And it's because they've bypassed the hard stuff.
Well, because nobody wants to focus on the hard stuff. Everybody just wants an easy, quick fix.
Right. And then they realize 10 years down the line, they're unfulfilled, unhappy, and they've got the same problems they had 10 years prior.
Because
that just means,
they skipped a step.
There's hard stuff to look at.
That's right. And nobody wants to look at it because it's the hard part. And
I think a lot of people also think that they're alone in that.
I think so.
And I encourage people who are beginning to ask some hard questions and experiencing hard things in life. The first thing I say is, you're not supposed to do this alone. You are not. And I'm so passionate about this. You're not supposed to be alone in the hard stuff. There's people around you. The universe provides you with people who are always there to listen. You just have to be willing to know who they are.
Right. Yes, exactly. And you have to recognize that in that other person when you find them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you've started would you call it a coaching business? Is it more of an online blog thing? Do you actually have people come into like an office? Like how does your operation work? That's what I want to know.
I love that question. Right now it is in-person and virtual coaching. And that's the most simple way that I can probably explain it right now. Coaching, because everybody understands what coaching is.
Yes.
Sometimes it looks like mentorship. I have a lot of women coming to me who are asking questions about their power. Like what is this? What's happening to me? And how can I most authentically open up? And then I've got men coming in starting to ask, what is this stuff about vulnerability? Like, I don't know what to do with this. Nobody's ever taught me about this. But they realize that if they don't look at it, just something is not going to align. There's a piece of fulfillment that both men and women, and I'll be very clear, like all genders are starting to ask. Like, there's more here and my soul is longing for more. So my coaching business supports those questions. So I've got introductory coaching programs that are done both in person but also on the phone. And then I have executive coaching programs for the higher level stuff. And then I also do in-person events. So I've got one coming up this Saturday for women, and it's for feminine power and feminine creation. Yeah, I've been spending the whole day on the phone with the women who will be in the workshop, and we're talking about what's been coming up in their life. How do we make this workshop the most relevant for what's actually happening for them? And we're also like creating an intention for what they want to experience in the workshop. So coaching for now, I do a lot of content. Really, this whole, what did you call it? Operation.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a better word.
No, I like that. This whole operation is just my own exploration of my expression in the world and really stepping into how I know that I'm valuable and how I'm a genius. And that hasn't always been hard for me. There's so many years where I'm like, I have nothing to teach. Even if I do, no one's going to show up. And so we could look at this as a traditional coaching business, but this is essentially just me. And this is me coming in full force and saying, this is who I am. Whoever wants to listen, whoever wants to learn, I am here for you.
So you put the word out and the students come or they don't come, but you are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing that I love is that every woman who's coming to my event on Saturday, I end the call with saying, I just want to let you know that you are going to be a teacher for all of us. So I have this huge love for just expressing to people in front of me that, like, you are my teacher too. And I really hold you to that. I don't know, I could say standard, but it's not really a standard. It's like, I really hold you to that belief and that frequency and that possibility. Like, you're here to teach me just as much as I'm here to teach you.
We all learn from each other.
Yes. Yeah. I think we all need to be reminded more of that. You know, when people see that someone has a business and they're a coach, there's this tendency to either put them on a pedestal or say that they aren't relevant to me, when we kind of forget about the very human aspect that has us put ourselves as teachers as well.
Right. And nobody has all the answers. And so that's what you mean by we all learn from each other.
Yeah.
And we all grow as a result. And so this thing that you have coming up on Saturday, it's you basically talking to a bunch of women about their power, is what it is? Or
yeah, so it's called the Cosmic Mother Embodiment Experience.
Wow, okay.
And it's just supposed to sound super cool. It's not supposed to be like, oh, I know what that is. You know, what it is going to be is around the concept of creation and the archetype of the creator, our creator.
Okay.
And a lot of us have recognized our creator as a male figure, which is completely okay. It's great. But there's this other aspect that's been coming more online, which is a feminine version of creation. So I started to notice probably like when I was 22 in my prayers and meditations that there was this more feminine version coming through that was nurturing and that was holding me, that just did not feel the same as the masculine version of the creator that I'd known my entire life. I've been just paying attention to this energy, this presence for a really long time and learning different things about this presence from other people and what they've experienced. And one of the names that some people give this presence is the original female principle of creation, or the cosmic mother, or Sophia, or there's different versions of what people call this energy. What I wanted to do was create an introductory event for women to come together in a room and acknowledge this energy and really allow this energy to be a partner in the way that they see themselves as well as the way that they create. So there's like a lot of women who will be at the event who are used to being really hard on themselves about achievement and success. And as you might know, that's a very masculine way of operating in the world.
True.
There's energies that are coming more online that are much more nurturing, that have to do with vulnerability. The gift of the feminine is her vulnerability. So we're all leaning towards those possibilities of living a life that way. So the women will be able to get into the event space, be together. They're all teachers to each other. They all represent a certain aspect of feminine power and their own healing. Like some women are going through tension in their love and relationships as far as communication. Some of them are stepping into a new version of power in their business, like reclaiming a newer version of themselves. Some women are apprehensive about even being accepted by other women. So the things that we'll be working through and nurturing in the event is going to be the things that are going on in their life, like that stuff, but it's also going to be embodying more of this feminine power, doing movement exercise, and really claiming different parts of them or parts of them that they never knew existed.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
How long is this session going to last for?
Well, I originally wanted it to be 2 days, but I figured that would have been too intense. I just wanted to introduce the women to the work first, so it'll be about 5 hours on Saturday.
I wish we had something like that here. There's nothing.
Oh, well, maybe I can come out there. I do the women's event around the Cosmic Mother, and then I'm also thinking about doing a men's event, which would be centered around embodying the light masculine and the dark masculine.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
So as the female principle of creation comes more and more online, there is a process of the healing of the masculine as well. Like a lot of men growing up have been told, men don't cry, be a man, toughen up. You definitely know what that's like.
I do.
Just this almost like this like guilt or fear of hurting other women or hurting women in general. This guilt of being masculine, of being the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And then there's this version of just terror, this feeling of terror for exploring any version of vulnerability within themselves.
Yeah, I could believe that, because it's hard for us to let our guard down and be vulnerable out of fear of being made fun of or being considered less than a man or whatever it is.
Exactly. So those questions are coming up everywhere, all throughout the world, especially in Western societies right now. Men are just starting to ask the questions like, what does vulnerability mean to me? If I were to really open up and tell the world what I'm feeling and thinking, would that make me less of a man? So there are two aspects of masculinity that I've worked with. And one aspect is the light masculine. This could be like Christ or Buddha. And then there's this version of the dark masculine, which could be one of the mythological deities called Pan, or even Lucifer.
Okay.
Now, if you think of the way, how do people view Jesus and Buddha? So there's a light masculine inside of every man and woman, but we'll just focus on men right now, because that's the workshop. There's a Jesus and a Buddha inside every man. And then on the flip side, there's a Pan and a Lucifer inside of every man as well. Now, if you think of the way that people view Lucifer, one of my teachers taught me more about this, and it wasn't like I was doing Luciferian work. Like I didn't do any of that like worship or whatever. It was just like an educational environment and an inquiry.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, let's look at Lucifer. If I just want to see the way people view him. Okay, number one, people blame Lucifer for everything terrible in this entire world.
Yes.
Is that true or not? Okay, there's that thing. So Lucifer's like, cool, I'm blamed for everything. I'm kind of used to it, period. The second thing about him is that, like, there's a mature version and maybe an immature version. So there's, like, a version that wants to take without permission, or a version that wants to penetrate everything, or a version that wants to destroy anything that's not truth, you know? There's these versions inside of everybody that normally, based off of the way we were grown up, we judge or repress, which can sometimes turn into like almost like a virus or a cancer. It turns into us acting out because we're rejecting these parts of us. So what that workshop would be centered around is if, hey, we got a great group of men in the room and we started having conversations about what would it look like if I were to own more of my light masculine tendencies, or what would it look like if I were to own more of my dark masculine tendencies.
I think that's great. Wow, I'm jealous. I'd like to be in San Diego for this.
Oh, well, I thought about doing these workshops all over the nation. One thing about running a business and doing events is filling event spaces is sometimes kind of like hit or miss. So
Right.
the ones I'm doing in San Diego right now, I'm definitely testing the interest here. The work is powerful, so powerful. And sometimes it's not something that you can even explain on a page, like a website page. So I'm doing a couple here, and then I think I'll go around the nation and do a couple more.
Test the waters first, and then see how it's perceived or how people react to it, and then go from there.
Yeah, a little bit, and really just show people, like, you want to be in this room. I guarantee you that. So if you want a little taste, get it. Here it is.
I think a lot of people could benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, are people willing to experience it, to go to a workshop like this and be vulnerable?
Right. And that's a great question, because one thing that's my job, and I've made it my job, is that I have a responsibility to at least facilitate a safe environment. Me, and if I have any other assistants or any other teachers that want to show up and facilitate, like, it's our job first and foremost to create a safe environment, an environment that's empowering, an environment where anyone can experience literally anything or show any part of them, and it is just completely accepted and used as like fuel for change and transformation.
I think it's definitely something that our world needs right now.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about this work. Thank you for asking that.
Oh, I can tell. I can sense your passion about this whole thing. It's great. And you have a lot of people in your life that support you and are into the same kind of thing, or do you find it's a little bit of both?
I have so many people in my world who support me. I actually grew up thinking that I was alone. I decided that I was alone and that I was going to have to do this all alone. And I even created situations to prove that, self-sabotage.
Yes, of course.
So,
well aware of that.
Yeah, even when I moved to San Diego and I had hundreds of people around me that like really loved me, I still didn't believe them. I believed that I was alone. And I grew up as an only child. And so it's like I was super committed to isolating myself and just not really trusting that anyone was really there for me. So that's pretty much what most of my life has been. In the last 5 years, I really have gotten past that belief. And I'm not going to downgrade it at all. I am beyond that belief. Like, what happened when I was in New Zealand for the 7 weeks was, it was almost like 24/7 I was trying to prove to the universe that I was alone.
Okay.
Even though I had 30 people around me learning their own lessons, it's not funny, but it was just so ironic and so helpful that every single time I went to go and prove that I was alone, there were 3 more people to show up at my doorstep willing to help me no matter what. And finally, at the end, I cracked. I just got the message. I'm like, it doesn't matter what I do or how I am being. If I say something wrong or right, it doesn't matter. These people are here for me. And they might come in and out of my life, but I just got the concept from the universe that, like, I'm never going to fall. These people are here for me no matter what. And so this is, another part about our work is just to remind people that they're not alone and they can try their hardest to prove that they are alone, but they're just not going to win. Right,
because the universe keeps sending you signs or people or messages saying, hey, no, you're not alone. Keep trying, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's what you found in New Zealand.
It's what I found in New Zealand, yeah, and something that I am so committed to communicating with people that cross my path, people that, sign up to work with me or go to the workshops. Like, I don't care what we are talking about, but I will try my best to instill in you that I've got your back. I always have my back as well, so I'm not like walking around pleasing people or trying to do that. It's like I've got my back, but I've also got yours in such a familial and soul-centered way. Like I will never not be here.
And that's some of the stuff that I actually read on your blog about being a people pleaser. That's a trap you can fall into.
Yeah, and it's something that I also looked at when I was in New Zealand. It's like I got to the point where I was like doing people's laundry at one point.
No way.
And I loved it.
Oh.
Yeah, I loved it. You know, like I grew up in a Filipino family. Like we did things for each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what we did.
Okay.
And so I just did that my whole life. And then I'm like sitting in New Zealand doing someone else's laundry, and they walk up to me. They go, "What are you doing?"
Oh, they didn't even ask you.
No, they didn't even ask me to do it. I just freaking did their laundry.
Oh, gee, wow, okay. Because you love helping people.
I love helping people. I didn't think twice about it. I'm like, okay, they're in a meeting right now, and the laundry's gonna get like mildewy. I'm just gonna do this, and they're gonna love it. So they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm doing your laundry." They're like, you didn't have to do that?" And I go, "I know I didn't have to, but I want to." And then I just got really real with myself. How many choices do I make on a daily basis where I'm pleasing someone else over a potential of pleasing myself? So what I started to do, I was challenged by one of my sisters to say, "Why don't you look me in the eye and tell me that you will be nothing for me?" And that like blew my mind open.
That must
I'm
be
like,
difficult.
It was like difficult, but it was just like, wait, what? I can do that? Like I can have that perspective? So my whole life I've danced around trying to be something for everybody. I would come in a room, I would track the room, I would meet someone new, I would figure out what they're like, and I would like try to be a version of me that they would like. Just like literally every day of my life. And so in this training, I just internally told myself, I will be nothing for you. And I tried to make myself as empty as possible. And every time I talked to somebody and I reminded myself and also communicated to them at certain points, like, I can't be anything for you. I will be nothing for you. But if something else comes up authentic, then I'll share that with you. But it was just, breaking the pattern of people pleasing. Mm-hmm. And being okay if somebody was upset that I would say something.
And what did you find out of that experience? Was it hard at first? Was the other way exhausting? Did you find you had more energy once you stopped being a people pleaser?
So what I found out about that process is that I didn't die.
Oh, there you go. Because you're here right now talking to me. So yes, you're okay.
Yep, and it's so funny because we have these patterns in our life, and the ego structure says if you break this pattern, you're going to die.
Right.
And I realized I didn't die, so that was actually really great. So after I realized that, I take to the information that it takes 66 days to create a new habit. And so that's just what I've been working on since.
66? I heard it was 21, but 66 makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, I think in more neurological articles and research, it's turned into 66. I could be completely wrong, but that's just what I've read.
We'll go with it.
We can triple that 21 just in case.
Why not? That's it. Okay. So, let's see here. What I'm thinking is, why don't this has been a pretty good primer for listeners who may not be aware of your services, your coaching, or this whole way of looking at life. Are there a couple messages that you would like to basically drill this down to have people walk away from this podcast with?
Yes. So just off the top of my head and my heart, number one, based off of what we talked about, like you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Number two, if there's a pull, like an intuitive pull to go somewhere or do something, do it. And if you need support in taking that leap, then remember the first thing, that you're not alone and that you can ask the universe or whatever you call the thing that brings us things. Just ask for someone to come into your life to where it's very obvious that they could help you. The third thing would be that if you are starting to ask more spiritual and soulful questions, there's a whole level of trust that you are learning right now. Don't try to understand it.
Just go with
because
it.
What you think it is now is infinitely 10,000 times bigger than what you can even comprehend right now. So the more that you can allow yourself to continue to remember and surrender and trust that there's an unconscious, a spirit part of you that is leading some of this way, you are co-creating with that part of you. I don't want to leave all the responsibility to that thing, but just know that trust is like one of the biggest themes of almost every single person's life in the last 5 years right now, since 2012, I'll say. Trust, and know that you don't need to figure out the magnitude of that trust or how far you might need to fall into that trust to really get to the next place that you want to go.
I'm on board with all of this. I like that a lot. We're going to tell our listeners all the ways that they can get a hold of you. We already talked about livatantric.life, which is your blog.
Yes.
And is that your basically your media hub, your the best way of getting a hold of you, or are you on Twitter, all that stuff?
So you can find me on my website. I do have blog information. I also have program information. I've got a couple of small courses, if you want to just start testing out some of the teachings here. And then I also have larger coaching packages. You can email me, find the contact information on my website. Then you can also find me on Facebook as Meta Tara, and you'll find more of my daily updates around my events and some of my more recent posts and contemplations on my Facebook. Also, you can find me, I'm really open to just private messages on Facebook Messenger as well, and email. If any of this resonates with anyone, I invite you to just reach out for a call, even if you don't know what you need right now. I'm always willing to chat and see where you're at in life, and if maybe working together one day would be a fit.
That's great. That's awesome. I love how we connected too. We're both in a podcast Facebook group, and we connected, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you call it coincidence or fate or whatever you want to call it. But it's the universe making things happen and allowing the word to be spread further.
Well, that was the third point of my last message. That was both you and I saying yes to trusting, putting that message out there and responding to each other. So coincidence, and we trusted ourselves.
We did. So good for us.
Yay!
Yay, us. That's right. So you're going to have a great coaching session with the ladies this Saturday. That's fantastic. What do you think about a few months from now, after you've done a few more of these coaching sessions, maybe you've done the light and dark male one, coming back on the podcast, and maybe we'll have another chat about one thing specifically instead of the whole overall arching theme? Sure.
So 6 months from now, I'd love to have another conversation. And where I'll be at and where we will be at in 6 months is, I think I will have had more information about the events. What do people want in these events, and how can I help best serve them in the live experiences? And then also, I'm looking to fill a few coaching spots. Just ended one coaching agreement, and in 6 months, I imagine my coaching practice will be full, and I'll be also traveling throughout at least the United States. There's a possibility for international workshops as well.
Well, if you can come to Canada, that would be awesome.
Okay, what part of Canada are you in again?
The land the culture forgot part.
You told me that. Well, how far are you willing to travel if I do go to Canada? Because I was thinking about that.
Let's see. I am about an 8-hour car ride from Toronto, which is our biggest city.
Toronto. I know so many people in Toronto, so we'll totally do that.
That would be great. I'd love that. All right. So thank you for coming on to the SoulForge podcast. I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really fun.
So I wanted to remind you once again that you can listen to this show and other podcasts on Spotify. And now it's easier than ever. Just open the app on your mobile device or desktop, click on Browse, and then click on the podcast section. It works on your computer, your phone, your smart speaker system, whatever you want to use. So stay connected to your favorite podcast and never miss an episode using Spotify.
Like I said, wasn't that amazing? Just a great lady all around. Go ahead and check out livatantric.life. That's her website. Check out her Facebook page. The link is in the show notes. If you have any feedback for this episode or any others, remember you can email the show, soulforgepodcast@gmail.com. And if you would, please leave a review in the iTunes store or the podcatcher of your choice. Let's spread the word about the Soul Forge, build a bigger community. If you've gone to the Soul Forge Facebook page lately, I've been posting a lot of messages of positivity and articles on different things. So check that out. Join the page, like the page, tell your friends. Until then, I will talk to you next week. And remember, the hardest prison to escape from is the mind. This has been another episode of the Soul Forge Podcast. Contact the show by emailing soulforgepodcast@gmail.com or by tweeting soulforgepod on Twitter. Visit us at soulforgepodcast.com, and remember, the best way to show your support is by leaving a 5-star review in the iTunes store. And, if you would, please check us out and like us on Facebook. The Soul Forge Podcast was written, produced, scored, edited, engineered, and directed by Sean Vanderloo. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Darth Vaderloo. For more great content, you can listen to my other podcast, The Rusted Robot. Thanks for stopping by the Forge. We'll keep the fires lit until your next visit.
I could do this all day.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.